Welcome. Let's get started and talk about our class, Discrete Math. I am Dr. Sean Bailey, and first off, I want to just talk to you briefly about an introduction to the class, what's involved in the class. Then we're going to talk about learning outcomes, i.e., what are you going to get out of this class? And then we're going to talk about me. I don't really want to do that much, but it's important that you do it. Talk about your textbook, prerequisites, and then we'll get to grading, which I know is something. And then I have a couple little tidbits of recommendations for you as we close out. So first, let's talk about what is discrete math. You get to do something that's different. This is not the same as calculus, algebra, or others. In fact, we will do very little computation in this class. We will talk about computation because computational complexity is a component of discrete math. We will also talk about other areas, logic, critical thinking, proofs, and we'll introduce some new areas of math that I'll get to in a little bit. But expect to come to these problems expecting to do things creatively. Come up with something new. Also be willing to try new problem-solving technical writing skills. You're expected throughout this class. Yes, your homework is going, I'll get your homework. Sometimes you'll just be entering things in, but you are also expected on part of the class for our discussion boards and exams to actually write in a clear and concise manner to convey your information. This is a very wonderful skill when you actually go get a job. So we want you to develop this and understand that this is a great area. Now let's talk about what exactly you are. So the state of Texas has a list of 8 outcomes that every student will do. And just to kind of highlight, the first one is that you can use logic. That means you can create arguments with both logical notation as well as understand the logic of them. 2, continue with logic, that you can understand the correctness of an argument. In other words, is it valid or not valid? And sometimes we use truth tables and other things like that. Number 3, that you can actually solve problems using combinatorics. Combinatorics is a fancy way to say counting. And we're also going to use that to do what is called discrete probability. We're going to continue to talk about problems involving recurrence relations. We're not going to really get into generating functions too much. I can mention them a little bit in this class. And then we're going to mention graphs and trees, which are great tools to visualize problems as well as do a lot of other things. We'll also do multiple operations involving sets, functions, relations, and sequences. Lots of different kinds of operations and understand what they are. Finally, we will do some proofs and we'll apply algorithms to solve problems to prove some things in elementary number theory. So we'll do some basic number theory as well. So some of the key topics, to break that down more clearly, we're going to talk about solid logic. Those who deal with Boolean, let's talk Boolean. Those who just true, false, we're going to get into this, how and, or statements, and all those work together. Talk about set theory. Set theory is very deep and has a lot of different areas, but pretty much it's the idea of collections of items. And we're talking about sequences and summations. This is different than calculus, especially those who've taken Calc 2. In that class, you're trying to predict what's the sequence and series do as it goes off to infinity. We don't care. We want to know what's a different way to simplify it or come up with a direct answer. We'll talk about functions and relations. We'll talk about combinatorics. And by the way, functions, it's going to be more than just drawing graphs. We're going to talk more about functions. We'll talk about discrete probability, how to calculate things and understand things in terms of the statistics that use discrete math. Guess what? We actually use that a lot in the real world. And then we'll end with graph theory, which is not about looking at graphs like y equals x squared. Instead, it's looking at what are called discrete graphs, also known as networks with nodes and other things like that. I'll give you a lot more. Now, I personally am really kind of passionate about this because my research is in graph theory and combinatorics. That's where I've published most of my work. I've also done work in math education. My PhD is in math. I also have a master's in education and a master's in math. And for all of you computer science people, the area of discrete math is the area of math that is most closely associated with the computer science. In fact, you can thank discrete mathematicians for creating computer science. We're the ones who came with the idea, and we wanted to create these devices called computers to help us do some new things. Now, on a personal note, I also enjoy powerlifting and just moving around really big weights. So you're welcome to ask me any questions about that. Let's get to the back to the class because I don't want to talk about myself anymore. But there's a quick picture of me if you need to know who I am. Quick prerequisite for the class is you have to have a C or better in Calc 1. Now, quick note on that. Are you really going to use that much from calculus? No. But we are going to use some algebra. And often students that have done Calc 1 with C or better are just more successful, even though we don't use the material. Part of it is the fact that calculus often has to make you think and ask the question of, which of these tools do I use? Because again, general problem solving is not just you know exactly what you're going to use. You have a lot of different options. All right, your textbook is going to be The Discrete Math and Applications by Susan Epps. We're going to use the 5th edition. That's the new edition. You also need a Cengage license. Now, if you want to get the ebook and just sign up for Cengage, WebAssign, that is perfectly fine. You can do that the first day of class, get in there, get your homework and so forth, and you're good to go. That would probably be the least expensive way to go about this, rather than having to buy a hardbound book. But if you really like something hard, which I totally get, I highly recommend it. All right, let's move on to the last thing, something else that you all want to talk about, grading. How on earth is grading going to work? Well, we have 3 main areas of grading: homework, discussion boards, and exams. Your homework will be through WebAssign. Each assignment is linked in Canvas, which means you don't even have to go to WebAssign. You go to Canvas and you can click and go straight over there. And it transports your scores automatically back into Canvas. It's really nice and easy. There are usually, it varies on the week. Some weeks we will have about 4, I think maybe a week with 5. Some weeks might have 2 assignments. You need to go check each week, see what is due, and make sure you get it done. All these assignments are going to be due by Saturday of each week with no late homework. I do recommend, though, you don't wait till Saturday. I recommend working on it throughout the week and asking questions, and I'll get some more questions a little bit later, but know that you can. In fact, we will have discussion boards because I want you to interact. There's plenty of evidence that just doing stuff and never interacting doesn't help you really learn. So we needed to talk about it, hash it out, attempt some problems. Throughout each week, you're going to have at least 1 discussion board a week, many weeks 2. And you are expected to jump in and answer questions by a certain date. You won't be able to see anyone else's answers by that point. After you respond, you can. Then you're going to need to respond to other people's responses, and then wait and come back and respond to someone's response to your initial post. If that makes sense. So, in other words, it's going to create a chain where the goal is to actually have conversations about this math. Because the truth is, math is learned by doing, not just looking at it. And for all of you that just want to Google and get an answer, don't do that. I know the difference between someone who just threw it in ChatGPT, which, by the way, sucks at logic, really funny, and even math problems. For all of you that think that ChatGPTs and all other AIs are wonderful, many of them are actually showing the more time it goes by, they get worse and worse at standardized math. So please read the directions. Please genuinely attempt. You're not being graded on your correctness for those. You're being graded on how much of an effort, how clear. If it's just like a one-liner clear throwaway, that's not going to be good enough. You need to clearly make an effort, maybe sit down and craft an answer and then post that. That's okay. We also will be graded on exams. You'll have 3 midterms and a final. Your midterms will each be 90 minutes and your final will be 120 minutes. On the exams, there are no notes, no cell phones, no calculators, none. We will be using Lockdown Browser so I can see you during the exam and you're expected to show. Please realize you're supposed to put your cell phone completely away. Don't even be checking email, text, any of that during it. As for calculators, don't panic. I expect you to set up the problems, and only in very simple calculations might I ask you to actually calculate the value. I'm not going to ask you. Besides which, we're going to actually deal with problems that if you threw them on a scientific calculator, it would have problems because they're just, well, too big. Each exam will have a 2-day window for you to attempt it. So Most of those are Fridays and Saturdays, so you can log in anytime on that Friday and Saturday to take that 90-minute window. Just make sure you get it. And there will also be a review the week of the exam that is actually counts as part of the exam. So please do it. All right, I'm getting a little bit long, but let's hit on a couple more things. Exam 1, Exam 2, Exam 3, and the final exam. Here are the dates. They're also in the syllabus. You can go look at them. They're kind of spaced equally. The grading structure is going to be a little bit different. There isn't a total percentage and then you're running score. So you can like, all right, I can do great on all these things that average out. You have to continually perform in all the areas. Now, each of the 4 areas, homework, your midterm scores, your discussion board, and your final exam, you need to hit 3 of these 4 standards for each grade. And the 4th can only be in the grade level below. So let me just kind of give an example. Suppose you got 100% on your homework, 100% on your discussion board, 100% on your final exam, but for some reason you only got 80% on your midterm exams on average. That would still qualify for an A. However, if you averaged only 70% on the midterm exam, it would actually take you all the way down to a C. So that's where this thing is kind of intermixed. You need to hit 3 of the 4, and the 4th has to be in the category directly below. In addition, the final exam is one of the categories that must be hit in the original thing. It can't be shifted down one level. So if you get below an 85% on the final exam, you're not getting an A. The end. So I left off the D and the F, well, because no one wants to talk about those. And honestly, I don't want you aiming for those. I want you aiming for these. So notice that means you need to get in there and do your homework every week, do your discussion board every week, and get yourself ready for the midterms so you can do exceptionally well. And then in the process, you'll prepare yourself to do well in the final. All right. Finally, we talked about help. I'm going to throw up a Slack channel, and I'm going to send you an email that includes an invite to this. But Slack is a really cool thing that's often used in a lot of different job markets, Slack, Discord, and others. It's a place where you can download the app on your phone, on your computer, and so forth, and you can literally throw up questions. You can throw up posts and comments and so forth. This is like a discussion board, but it's open. Now, there's going to be a spot to throw up homework questions. This doesn't mean that you throw up and say, okay, you do the work for me. People are going to maybe give you a hint or suggestion about where they're struggling. And someone else can be like, hey, I tried this or tried this, just a little thing here and there. I will be paying attention. I will jump in every now and again, but it's actually going to be predominantly you all helping each other, because the best way to learn, again, is to actually help one another, not just sit there to listen to me, because, well, I get boring. So last couple of suggestions for the semester. 1, make a regular schedule. Like say Monday night, I'm going to work from 6 to 7. Tuesday, I'm going to do this, or create in a couple days. As a reminder, this is a 3-credit class. The expectations are that you're going to spend between 9 and 12 hours every single week on this class. Minimum. So make sure you're giving yourself time to actually work on it. 2, ask questions. And 3, don't be afraid to fail. Whether that's on homework attempts, even on exams, be willing to try something. And that is how you will often learn, or something else. If you're afraid of trying, well, you never try, you never succeed. So trust me, the key to great mathematics and great thinking is to be willing to step out of our comfort zone and try some things every now and again. I hope you have a great semester. Send me an email if you got any questions. Have a good one.